Dr. Barbara Becker-Holstein. I'm a psychologist and an educator, and that's given me a unique perspective. I've had an opportunity to work with people from ages infancy to into their 90s. And in the course of all this work, I have had a chance to learn a lot about happiness. And quite frankly, being happy is like having a wonderful toolbox. A good carpenter has some wonderful tools that he uses again and again. For example, he may have a special hammer that he always uses, but on the other hand, he may have a special pair of pliers that he hardly ever uses. And it's the same with happiness. In order to be happy, we need to have a whole bunch of tools, some of which we're going to use again and again and again as we repeat many of life's situations that are not all so different. It's Monday morning, every 7th day of the week, for example. We need to know how to be in a good mood. On the other hand, there are some extremely unique points in our lives, whether it's a first child, or dealing with the grief of the loss of somebody, or moving, or having your first best friend when you're in the 4th grade, that are unique and not often repeated. And so for these times, as far as happiness, sometimes we may use tools that don't get used all that often. I have found a way to teach you all the things you're going to need in your toolbox to make sure you are happy every day, whether it's a very repetitive standard day in your life or a very unique event. I am going to help you walk through each gateway and learn the tools that you need that go with the gateway. You're going to very quickly see that these gateways make perfect sense. This is not psychological or educational mumble jumble. I am speaking to you very simply with clarity, and you're going to get it right away, I know. Let's look right now at the first gateway. The first gateway is all about self-esteem and self-worth. And I know you understand that just as soon as I say it. It's so important for all of us to feel good about ourselves and feel that we have self-worth and that we are a valuable person in society, both to our family and to the world at large. The real issue here is not that we don't all agree. I am sure we all agree that this is important, that self-esteem is very important. The real question is, how do we develop good self-esteem? And how do we develop good self-esteem within our children? Is it easy? Unfortunately, it isn't always easy. And you might ask, well, why is that? We all want it. It makes perfect sense. We want it for our children too. One of the major reasons it's so hard is we tend to look at what's wrong with ourselves rather than what's right. We tend to become expert examiners in recognizing and talking about all our mistakes, our character traits that are not up to par, the ways we behave that we wish we could improve, our bodies that are too big, too small, too tall, whatever, our mannerisms, whatever it is, our latest haircut, what we said to our boss or didn't say to our boss, what we said to our husbands, and the list goes on and on. By the time we're through, it's very hard for many of us to recognize our talents, our strengths, our potential, those parts that have tremendous capacities to improve our lives and the ways we handle our world and our talents, if only we can tap into the potential and not be afraid. Not only are we experts at putting ourselves down and listing what's wrong with ourselves rather than what's right, we're pretty good at doing the same thing with our children. We can tell you many things about our kids, and they're not always good. We're quick to mention that Johnny isn't doing his homework, or that he has a fresh mouth, or that Sarah always interrupts, or her room is a mess. We don't like the boyfriend or girlfriend that our child has picked. We're worried because we don't think they're a sufficient driver to go get a driver's license, and the list goes on and on. But more importantly, what is right about yourself and what is right about your children? Actually, self-esteem is more precious than diamonds. Without it, we feel bad. We can even become depressed. We blame ourselves for what we should or shouldn't have done. We feel discouraged more often than we need to. We have a negative view of ourselves, and that often interrupts our development. The results can be devastating. Do you know you can have repetitious life patterns that just keep repeating themselves because we keep viewing ourselves and our world in the same old way? So if I keep seeing myself as not being successful at certain tasks, I may set myself up so indeed I am not. And so the vicious cycle goes on. When we have good self-esteem, this is much less likely to happen. So again, when I say that good self-esteem is more precious than diamonds, I really do mean it. We need our self-esteem. I see adults with poor self-esteem all the time in my treatment room, and the results can be devastating, even generational. People with poor self-esteem often don't have the energy to really give of themselves in positive ways to their children or grandchildren or even their jobs. There's one woman that comes to my mind, and I wrote about her in my first book, The Enchanted Self, A Positive Therapy. In this book, I have many case studies as I help women recognize many facets of developing the tools they need for self-esteem. Let me tell you a little bit about Julia. Julia was a beautiful woman in her late 40s when she came to see me, highly successful, a businesswoman in her own right. She had had quite a critical father who would say things perhaps unthinkingly to her like, "Gee, your dress is a little messy. Can't you take better care of yourself?" Then she married a man who also seemed to lack some thoughtfulness in some of the things that he said. For example, one year she asked him if there was enough money in the budget so she could go to a health spa for a week. He came back and said, "Yes, there's enough money. Why don't you go? It'll help you take those few pounds off." Whether she needed to lose a few pounds or not, his response kind of spoiled the pleasure of going to the health spa. She remembered many other episodes. For example, when they were a young couple and she ordered a lobster at dinner, and then the waitress said, "And what would you like? Would you like a baked potato?" She was about to say yes, and her husband said something like, "Oh, well, she'll pass on that. She doesn't need the calories." Well, needless to say, Julia did not enjoy her lobster. But guess what? Her husband did, and after he finished his steak, he finished her lobster. So she had quite a bit of rage and anger around a lot of family issues where she felt her self-esteem had been really trampled on. We spent a lot of time in therapy where I helped her appreciate her talents, her strengths, even her lost potential, She was a highly successful woman. She knew how to run a big business. She was friendly, she was smart, and as a matter of fact, she took very good care of her body. She was trim, she dressed beautifully, and she really had everything going for her. After a while, she really began to understand that indeed she was a talented person with a lot of strengths and a lot of potential. Once she understood this, we also worked a lot on getting her needs met, which I'm just giving you a little clue is in another gateway, so I'm not going to fully develop it tonight. But we also worked on her learning how to say what she needed to say and express her feelings and not put up with inappropriate behavior. After a while, she had learned to cue her husband in that if he did not control himself with his mouth, she would actually leave for a few hours. And believe it or not, he just fell in line like a kitty cat. He just learned to better behave himself somehow once she was stronger. And the results for her daughter and her granddaughter were really amazing. Because Julia now had more time and energy for her daughter and her granddaughter, she was actually able to see them in a more positive light, boost them up, celebrate their talents, and they all had a better time. Yes, Julia is a success story. I want to make sure that all of your children become success stories. I want them to grow up feeling good about themselves, feeling they have self-worth, feeling full of energy. The kind of energy we have when we do know that we have talents, that we know we have strengths, we know we have good coping skills, and that tomorrow really will be a wonderful day. What does it take? For you as a parent, it means recognizing and encouraging what is best in your child. Every child has talents, strengths, coping skills, and potential. How do you get to them? How do you as a parent help these positive traits come out rather than focusing on the negative? In the case of children, two things are necessary. Children need to feel special, and you need to develop the talents and techniques to help them feel special. With children, it is not just pointing out talents and strengths and potential. With adults, we can do a workshop and make a list of our untapped potential and really get some energy going toward building a new future for ourselves. And I've done that many, many times in Enchanted Self workshops. It's organic. I remember, for example, sitting on my grandmother's lap on the back porch in Brookline, and she was singing God Bless America to me. And my grandfather was there enjoying the singing. And I just knew that I was the sun and the moon to her. It was transmitted. That's what I'm talking about.